Hi, this is Charles with AniCap. In today's video, we will be telling you a story from the anime film Hatarobi no Mori-i, or as it is known in English, To the Forest of Firefly Lights. The movie opens with various shots of a foggy forest, and then shows a man sitting on top of a rock in a lake, which will later be revealed as one of the main characters of this movie, Gin. In the next scene, we see our female protagonist named Takigawa Hotaru preparing to leave her house for a summer vacation at her uncle's house. Her mother is reminding her to listen to her uncle while making sure that she has all she needs and advising her to not zone out as to not leave any of her belongings behind. Hotaru confidently answers that there is no need to worry since she has been going there every year. But her mother is still worried and even tells her to wear her hat, which Hotaru declined as she steps out of their door. As she arrives at the bus stop, Hotaru smiles and begins to remember when she first met Gin, who is the reason she looks forward to the summertime in the first place. She has a flashback to the fond memory of meeting Gin when she was 6 years old. She narrates how she was lost in the forest of the mountain god where spirits reside. Hotaru is seen curled up on the grass as she was tired from running around looking for a way out. When she was crying from fear and loneliness, she heard someone shout and call her Shorty. She looked around and was happy to see a man with silver hair wearing a mask staring at her from behind a tree. The person, seemingly concerned, asks her why she's crying. Relieved to see another person, she runs to him thinking she is finally saved, but to her surprise, the man avoids her, leaving her to fall face down on the grass. The man apologizes. Seeing that she is a human child, he explains that when a human touches him, he will disappear. Hotaru is confused and asks him if he is not a human. He responds that he is someone who resides in the forest, which makes Hotaru conclude that he is one of the spirits. Still curious about what he meant by disappearing, she attempts to touch him several times, but he manages to dodge her every attempt. Eventually, the man grabs a stick and hits her on the head to make her stop. He then explains that it was a spell cast by the mountain god, and to disappear means that he will be obliterated when touched by a human. The man, unable to hold Hotaru by the hand, tells her to hold the other end of the stick so that he can guide her out of the forest. Hotaru is overjoyed and runs to hug him out of gratitude, only to be hit again with the stick. As they are walking, Hotaru says that it feels like they are on a date. The man then asks her if she's not afraid, to which Hotaru asks of what, and he just says never mind. They reach the exit and he tells her to walk straight and she will see the mountain path. As he bids her goodbye, Hotaru asks if he is always going to be there and if they can meet whenever she comes back. He advises her to not come back anymore as it is dangerous and she may get lost forever. Hotaru, seemingly ignoring the warning, introduces herself to him, but he does not respond. Then as she walks away, she tells him that she will be back tomorrow with a thank you gift. As she leaves, the man finally tells her that his name is Gin. She turns around, but Gin is already gone. We are then shown that Hotaru's uncle had been looking for her, and as they met, he hits her on the head and scolds her. Hotaru then cries as she hugs him. They are walking home when Hotaru asks her uncle if there are really spirits living in the forest. Her uncle then tells her a story about how he used to come to the forest with his friends as a kid, hoping to see the spirits as well, but he never did. Then he recalls that Aiwa and her friends once had fun at a summer festival in the forest. But the villagers would never hold a festival in the forest, which led them to believe that they actually snuck into a festival of the spirits. The next day, Gin was surprised to see that Hotaru had really come back. Hotaru was glad to see him waiting for her as well, and immediately ran to hug him. He hits her on the head again, exclaiming that she never really learns. Gin then invites her to walk through the forest since it is hot out under the sun, which Hotaru gleefully accepts. As they are walking through the forest while eating their snacks, Hotaru sees a black figure hiding behind a tree. It speaks and asks Gin if he is with a human child and if he can eat her. Hotaru hides behind Gin and he answers that she is his friend. The black figure then warns Hotaru to not touch Gin's skin or he will eat her. Gin then scares it off as it is revealed to be some kind of fox spirit. It transforms in order to scare people, but it is all bark and no bite. They continue walking and Hotaru asks Gin why he is wearing a mask. He said to not mind him and just tell him more about herself. Hotaru was happy to know that he was curious about her and that it was the reason he waited for her as well. Then we see a montage of Hotaru coming back every day to be with Gin. One day, Hotaru sees Gin laying on the grass sleeping. She wonders if she can touch his mask and proceeds to remove it. She is surprised to see that Gin looks like a normal human being. He then opens his eyes and explains that he wears the mask to look like a spirit. As they are walking out of the forest, Hotaru tells Gin that she will not be back the next day as she only stays at her uncle's place for the summer. Gin then asks her if she will come back again next year. Hataro says yes with a smiling face. The film cuts to their promised next summer where they run into a tree spirit. The spirit shows concern for Gin and tells him that being with a human child is dangerous. Gin says that it is fine, but the spirit still reminds Hataro to not touch Gin. As they move on, other spirits appear around the forest to say the same thing. After a couple more summers pass, we see Gin looking for Hataro, who is trying to scare him by hanging upside down in a tree. She fails to scare him and the two begin to talk. Hataro asks if Gin would take the mask off once in a while, and he agrees to do so. The branch begins to break and Hataro is about to fall. She sees Gin running to catch her, but he stops midway since he can't touch her. Luckily, Hataro lands on a bush unharmed. She then looks at Gin and asks him to never touch her no matter what. She gets emotional and begins to cry. A few summers later, we see Hataro has become a 5th grader. When she goes to visit Gin, he comments on how Hataro is beginning to look like a woman. Hataro explains that it is because she is a woman now. It becomes apparent that Gin ages much slower than humans do, and the two of them are becoming closer in age. After spending the day together, Gin takes his mask off and Hataro stares at him for a while. Back at her uncle's house, she is lying on the floor thinking about how she will be older than Gin someday. Her uncle invites her to eat watermelons, and he talks about how the winter will be much colder this time, enough to freeze even the mountain god. She later visits Gin on the last day of summer to give him a scarf. In the next scene, Hataro is shown back at school, spacing out through the winter. Outside, a friend holds her hand so she does not slip on a patch of ice. This leads to Hataro longing to see Gin again, but also to touch him. We then see a glimpse of Gin back in the forest wearing the scarf Hataro gave him. The next scene is Hataro visiting Gin again, now a high schooler. She talks to Gin about finding a job near her uncle's place when she graduates so she can be with Gin more often. Gin then decides that it is time to tell her more about himself. He tells her that he is not a spirit, but is no longer a human either. He explains that he was abandoned by his parents in the forest as a human baby when the spirits found him. He says that he was meant to die, but the mountain god placed a spell on him so he would never pass on and could continue living. He tells Hataro that it is fine to forget about him since his body is weak, reminding her that when a human touches him, the spell will break and his body will disappear. Hataro reassures him by saying that she thinks about him all year round, even when they are not together. She then asks him to never forget her. Knowing that time will eventually separate them, she asks that they stay together until then. Gin invites Hataro to the summer festival held by the spirits, now that she is old enough to not be scared. He asks if she could sneak out of her uncle's house that night, as he has been wanting to take her there for a long time. Hataro agrees, but is still worried she might get scared. Gin explains that the festival is not very different from human festivals, as it was designed to mimic them. They arrive at the festival and the spirits are all disguised as humans. Gin mentions that sometimes even real humans accidentally mix in, unaware that all the people are actually spirits. Then Hataro remembers her uncle's story about the summer festival. Since they can't hold hands, Gin ties a cloth to both of their wrists so that Hataro won't get lost. Hataro jokes that it is almost like they are on a date, and Gin responds that they are on a date. After enjoying many festivities, their date nears its end. They both walk along a lake after leaving the festival. Gin then says to Hataro that he can no longer wait for summer to come around, and that when they are apart he wants to go see her even if it means risking his life in large crowds. After hearing this, Hataro stares at him and resists the urge to hold his hand. Gin takes off his mask and puts it on Hataro so that he can kiss her over it. He tells her to keep the mask, which makes Hataro think that it might be their last time meeting. As they continue walking, they are passed by two spirits. One of them trips, but Gin manages to catch him before he falls. After checking on the spirit, Hataro turns to face Gin. She sees Gin staring at his hand as it begins to disappear. It seems that the boy was actually not a spirit in disguise, but an actual human. Gin, knowing that these are his last moments, turns to Hataro with a smile and open arms, telling her to come hug him as he is finally able to touch her. Hataro runs towards him and hugs him tightly. Finally being able to express their feelings through touch, the two embrace. The hug only lasts for a moment though, as Gin completely disappears. As Hataro lies sobbing on the ground, the film cuts to a moment where we can hear the two say that they love each other. As Hataro leaves the forest, she holds Gin's mask close. Spirits begin to appear, thanking Hataro for spending time with Gin and for hugging him, as Gin really wanted to touch a human. She then moves forward as she thinks about how hard summers will be in the future. She is able to find comfort though in knowing that the memories she made with Gin will live on in her heart forever. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment with what anime movie you'd like me to recap next.